Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee have agreed that interest rates will remain at the historic low of 0.1%. I'll be analysing market reaction with Lukman Otunuga, a senior research analyst at FXTM, who'll be joining me from London. And Morgan Stanley estimates that commercial space tourism could generate more than $1 trillion over the next 2 decades. I'll be throwing back to an interview I conducted earlier in the week with former NASA astronaut Nicole Stott, discussing the new pastime of daring billionaires. She'll be joining me from St. Petersburg in Florida. Then later, I'll be reporting on the biggest company stories of the week. But first, let's start the show with business news from here in the UK, where scarcity of raw materials, stretched supply chains and staff shortages weighed on the country's manufacturing PMI data for the month of July. The index slipped to 60.4 from 63.9 in June. A reading above 50 indicates an expansion. Although rates of growth in output and new orders slowed, they remain the best in the survey's history amid robust exports to domestic and international clients. 72% of British manufacturers reported higher costs for a wide range of products, including chemicals, commodities and packaging. In response, factories have increased their prices. In other British business news, plans to introduce more restrictions to the increasingly complex travel traffic light system were dramatically scrapped by the British Prime Minister, following a backlash by industry bosses and Tory MPs, including the Chancellor Rishi Sunak and Transport Secretary Grant Shapps. The proposals would have meant that some countries would have been moved to an Amber Plus category, meaning British holidaymakers on vacation in those regions were at risk of being forced into an expensive hotel quarantine on arrival in the UK if their holiday destination was moved into the red.
I don't mind the restrictions here, it's fine, it's just being able to travel, that's what we kind of want to do, and so that's what's really stopping us, and we're oh, we just want that and then we'll be happy. But I guess that's going to take time, because obviously a lot of us are vaccinated, but the rest of the world and all these variants and stuff, that's what's stopping us.
If you get stuck up there, then you have to pay for extra accommodation and stuff. It's just it's not worth the hassle until it's more free, I think. Yeah.
No, you take your risks when you book it. If you're choosing to go somewhere and then it changes, you kind of know that it might change. So I kind of feel well, take the risk yourself.
Meanwhile, there were emotional scenes at British airports on Monday morning after new rules allowed fully vaccinated passengers from America and the EU to travel into the UK without needing to self-isolate. Although the removal of restrictions haven't been reciprocated, airline bosses welcomed the move and urged the government to further ease restrictions and allow people to enjoy the benefits of a successful COVID-19 inoculation programme. The number of passengers travelling through London's Heathrow Airport, the UK's busiest, fell 75% in the first half of this year.
Well, I think quarantine-free travel and testing-free travel is what we should be aiming for. And as more parts of the world get their vaccination levels up to the level we have in the UK, we should be aiming to get back to travel as it used to be and get back to connecting businesses and families in the way we always have done. And that's what Heathrow is all about. Travel demand will pick up over the next couple of months, and then I hope steadily build. And it might take a couple of years to get back to where it used to be, because that depends not just on the UK government's limitations on people coming in, but also on other countries getting their vaccination levels up. But within a few years, we should be back to where we used to be. And this is hugely important for the UK. Heathrow is the biggest port in the UK, and all the planes that fly from Heathrow carry the UK's exports all over the world, under the seats of the passengers. And so as we can get more countries connected, we can help to get British business back in the air and trading with countries all over the world.
I'm very pleased that today, because of the vaccine rollout, we're able to say to people coming back from anywhere in the EU, plus I think Switzerland, plus the United States, that they don't have to quarantine. So double jab people no longer have to quarantine. And what I want to do is obviously understand that people care very much about their holidays. People want to go abroad. I understand how much people plan prepare for the summer holidays. But we've also got to remember that this is still a dangerous virus, and that we must try and stop variants coming in, must stop importing variants from abroad. So we have to have a balanced approach. And what I want to see is something that is as simple and as user-friendly for people as possible. But obviously, the double vaccinations that we've got really do offer the way forward. I think we've now got more than 72% of the population has now had 2 jabs. The UK has been able to roll out vaccines at a pace that has been, I think, pretty good. We've now vaccinated more than people than any other country in Europe. And that means actually that the UK economy and society is just about the most open in Europe. And you'll have seen the figures from the IMF about growth in the UK, the bounce back that you're seeing in the UK economy that is directly attributable to that opening up and to that vaccine rollout. On travel, we've had to balance it because of the anxiety that I think a lot of people have, I have, about importing new variants, bringing back the disease. But we also have to recognise that people want badly to go on their summer holidays. We need to get the travel industry moving again. We need to get our city centres open again. And so we want an approach that is as simple as we can possibly make it.
Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by our business correspondent, Simon Pusey. Simon, mixed reaction to the backwards and forwards with the traffic travel light system. Also mixed data when it pertains to deaths and positive cases.
Yeah, so I think there's confusion, as there always is, really around what's going on. I don't think that's limited to the UK. I think a lot of countries are dealing with the same kind of things. If we just start with this kind of headline figures, 2 weeks ago, the UK opened up. All eyes were really on the UK in terms of how this was going to affect the number of cases. And I think it's been pretty overwhelmingly positive so far. And it's a sort of surprised quite a few scientists. A lot of people were looking at 100,000, 200,000 cases a day. We're nowhere near that. And 2 weeks on, the number of cases is going down and has been for the last 2 weeks pretty much. And the number of hospitalizations as well is now following that. I think the last time we were speaking, hospitalizations were going up. That's now going down as well. So really, all of those metrics going in the right direction. Having said that, 138 deaths on Monday of this week. That's the highest since March. And Boris Johnson has said that we are the most one of the most open economies now in Europe, but caution is still needed. So I think those kind of death tolls occasionally do seem to remind us that we're certainly not out of the woods yet. The government are trying to encourage young people to get the vaccine in some fairly sort of original ways. They are offering sort of discounts on food delivery and on things like taxi rides, Ubers, things like that. And I think that's because the younger part of the population are the least vaccinated at the moment and maybe the most skeptical about getting it, because obviously, scientifically it's less likely to seriously affect younger people, but it is still important because younger people can still carry and of course spread it. And then you mentioned the traffic lights. This is where a lot of the confusion seems to be. So this is about traveling out of Europe to go to other countries, also traveling in. But there seems to be quite a lot of confusion. There's a green, amber and red list of countries that has various different things that you have to do in terms of quarantining when you come back from those countries. And there was a proposal recently to create an amber watch list. So this is like not even amber, this is before you get to amber, but this is countries that may go into the red. There was going to be another kind of whole category, and the government have now scrapped that. And so just this kind of mood music that's coming out of Downing Street that seems to really affect people is kind of, well, can I travel? And I think a lot of the travel industry are getting really annoyed by stuff like this. So stuff gets leaked to the press about there being this amber watch list, and then people start worrying about their holidays or not booking their holidays. And I think if you're working in the travel industry, that kind of language or that kind of confusion is really annoying, and it risks people putting people off from traveling. Tour operators and industry bodies saying that uncertainty surrounding travel from the UK is causing an atmosphere of distrust among hoteliers and travel suppliers, and we're hearing of things like hoteliers not even accepting bookings from people from the UK because they don't trust that they're actually going to carry them out. And Labour are criticising a lack of transparency over who goes on these various traffic light systems. So, for example, France, the French would have to quarantine for 10 days, unlike fully vaccinated travellers from other countries. So people going to France would have to quarantine for 10 days, despite them being on the amber list. And this is the government saying, well, they have the Delta variant there. That seems to be really high. I think people just want a bit more certainty and transparency. And I think the Labour Party is saying, why are you making these rules up without any real data? You're not really providing the reasons or the answers. And most people, especially people working in the travel industry, are just saying, give us some certainty. Where can we go? Don't tear it up with a few hours to go, because I think that is putting people off when they're making their travel plans.
Absolutely, only a couple of weeks left for summer. Let's hope we get some beach time, Simon. Let's change gear now and turn our attention to market matters. This week, the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee met and voted unanimously to keep interest rates at the historic low of 0.1%. The group voted 7-1 to make no changes to its quantitative easing programme. Following 2 consecutive months of above forecast readings, the central bank raised its inflation forecasts in the near term, saying it will temporarily reach 4% by the end of the year. Sterling edged 0.25% higher against the dollar following the announcement. To discuss the market reaction, I'm now being joined by Lukman Otanuga, a senior research analyst at FXTM. He joins me from London. Lukman Otanuga, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. So no changes in monetary policy, but I'm getting a sense that the mood music in the central bank is beginning to change.
Thank you for having me here today. Yep, it was a policy meeting dominated by doves, but hawks certainly laid in wait. So as widely expected, the central bank left monetary policy unchanged, but there were some key takeaways in the policy statement that, showed that hawks could be making an appearance. Number one, the central bank remained fairly optimistic over GDP, with economic growth for 2021 expected to expand at 7.25% despite the COVID variant. Number two, the central bank was also saying that when interest rates get to 0.5%, they are likely to taper, which is quite hawkish. And finally, they even said that as long as inflationary pressures continue to rise, they are willing to start tapering and increasing interest rates. When you add all these things together, although there was a sense of caution in the meeting today, it looks like over the next few months, hawks may enter the scene.
Absolutely. Thank you for that summary there. We've had a look at some early data for Q3, the Purchasing Managers Indexes, starting to show that growth could be slowing. Do you think that's potentially one of the reasons why Governor Andrew Bailey doesn't want to tighten up monetary policy too soon?
Yeah, certainly. If we look at economic data over the last few weeks, it's been mixed. The Purchasing Managers Index, the retail sales, even jobs data have been painting a mixed picture. And when considering how there's still a sense of uncertainty over what impacts the COVID Delta variant may have on the UK economy in Q4, and the fact that the furlough scheme is coming to an end, which may result in rising unemployment, it makes sense why the central bank is likely to adopt a wait-and-see approach over the next few weeks to months before taking any action.
Absolutely. Before I let you go, Lukman, you've got to tell us how the currency market has been reacting to high inflation. What's the pressure on the British pound?
Certainly, it was an interesting reaction. The pound actually whipsawed against the dollar, but looking at the G10 space is appreciated against most G10 currencies. I think moving forward, with how markets are seeing the Bank of England slowly moving towards the hawkish spare, this could support the British pound in the medium to longer term. Looking at the pound US dollar, though, we have to keep in mind that the dollar is likely to weaken in the week ahead of the US jobs report disappoints. So I'll be looking for the pound US dollar to slowly edge higher with the key level of interest at 1.40.
Thank you, Lukman Otanuga, Senior Research Analyst at FXTM. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks, Lukman. Coming up on Channel's Business Global, I'll be discussing the next giant leap for billionaire mankind with former NASA astronaut Nicole Stott. See you after the break. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. In a few minutes, I'll be throwing back to an interview I conducted with former NASA astronaut Nicole Stott. But before then, here's some company news for you. Zoom Video Communications has agreed to pay $85 million to settle a lawsuit claiming it violated users' privacy rights by sharing personal data with Facebook, Google and LinkedIn. Although the group denied any wrongdoing, bosses agreed to additional security measures, and they also will provide specialised training to employees on privacy and data handling. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of Zoom Meetings paid subscribers, which has generated $1.3 billion for the firm. The video conferencing company has long been criticised for its approach to security after a series of Zoom bombing incidents. Fast food giant McDonald's has become the latest American firm to require both employees and customers to wear face masks on their premises. The move follows a resurgence of COVID-19 cases in America due to the Delta variant. The country's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention advised that people start wearing masks indoors again in areas with substantial or high transmission of the infection. Apple was the first US retailer to put a mask policy back in place. Last week, major tech firms Alphabet, Google, Uber and Facebook announced that all of their US employees must get vaccinated to continue working in their offices. It's been reported that Goldman Sachs has boosted pay for junior bankers following internal complaints over long hours. It's understood that first-year investment bank analysts working around the world will get a pay rise to $110,000 from a previous $86,000. Earlier this year, a group of employees complained of 95-hour-long working weeks, describing the conditions as inhumane. The bank, which recently reported a sharp rise in second quarter revenue, has declined to comment on the pay increases. And now to our next topic. Morgan Stanley estimates that commercial space tourism could generate more than $1 trillion over the next 2 decades. Revenues generated not by governments, but by billionaires who are competing to be the first to dominate the commercial space industry. According to NASA, competition between SpaceX and Blue Origin has helped bring down the cost of reaching low Earth orbit by a factor of 20. However, the contest has drawn criticism and concern among some observers. Earlier in the week, I was fortunate to speak with Nicole Stott, a retired NASA astronaut who had 2 space flights and has spent 104 days living and working in space as a crew member on both the International Space Station and the Space Shuttle. She joined me from St. Petersburg in Florida. Nicole Stott, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. I was saying off air, it's an absolute honour and a privilege, especially given the timing. There have been 2 major milestones achieved over the past couple of weeks. Not only have Sir Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos flown to the edge of space, I did read an open letter from Blue Origin, who are putting up, I believe, $2 billion to fund NASA's next Moon Man project. Can you just put into words how extraordinary this feat has been?
First of all, I think that's a wonderful word to use, extraordinary. If you look at the launches of Branson and Bezos suborbital, opening up, I think, a whole new, not just commercial market, business market, but a whole new way for people to see our planet, who and where we are in space together, which is a very positive thing. And then you mentioned Bezos with this offer to NASA for the moon missions. I think more and more we're seeing this very public NASA private partnerships going on that are going to just continue to take us further and further, open up the opportunities in space in all ways. And I'd like to think about it through the motto of the International Space Station is that everything we're doing off the Earth is for the Earth. And I look forward to all of those things coming to life through these activities.
Absolutely. A lot of people were a little bit critical about the billionaire space race. Of course, Sir Richard Branson beat Bezos in the open letter last week to NASA. Blue Origin did mention SpaceX, which is obviously funded by the Tesla billionaire boss Elon Musk. But I want to ask your opinion on whether you think mere mortals like us are even ready to descend into space. I know you spent more than 100 days living and working there. I know you've been asked this a million times, but can you try and put it into a few sentences of how that experience was for you?
I'll use the word extraordinary again. I think that as professional astronauts, we spend a lot of time preparing for that spaceflight activity, for the launch, the time living there, returning safely to Earth. It's a pretty extensive process, but we're going there to do the work job as well. I think in the simplest terms, awesome and surreal are the words that come to mind when I think about the actual experience. The physical nature of it, floating, flying, moving in 3 dimensions, what we're learning about our bodies and all of the science that's going on. Again, this idea of the fact that we're off the Earth for the Earth, everything ultimately about improving life on Earth. I don't know. I just think that, when we use this word mere mortals, the fact that we can send people to space and live and work there successfully, it shows that, that mere word might not be, might not be so important, and that there's a lot to do, I think, with just the desire to go and be there. Hopefully the motivation is greater than just, checking something off the bucket list, but, we're human beings. That kind of thing goes on as well.
Yeah, you've been pretty busy over the past couple of weeks. I've listened to lots of interviews that you have done. You seem to be one of several former astronauts who are celebrating the achievements from Bezos and Sir Richard Branson. But can you understand why some people are critical of their ambitions? There have been talks about colonizing Mars. I think a famous rapper even took to Twitter saying that he's now paid millions of dollars to own a planet. Can you understand why some are a little bit cynical at some of these pretty ambitious plans?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get it, but I also see, I see that side of it. I think the way perhaps that it's presented, could be improved a little bit. I think you've heard me say a couple times now, this idea that us, leaving the planet is not about abandoning the planet. It really and truly is about improving life here. I'd love to see more and more presentation of the kind of work that we're doing in space that is benefiting life on Earth. I will use Bezos as the example. I know a lot of the calm about this was, oh, how fun it was to go to space. We went suborbital, who beat whom. But in reality, if you look at Bezos' motivation, it is much, it's much higher level. It's ultimately about pulling the industrial kinds of things that are causing huge negative impacts to our planet off the Earth to allow Earth to become, I think, for us to see a future on Earth that's as beautiful as it looks from space, right? And, to take some of these things that are really causing such harm off of the planet in a safe way.
Before I let you go, Nicole, I've got to ask you about whether or not you would be willing or prepared to spend up to $28 million to fly aboard Blue Orbit or Sir Richard Branson's spacecraft anytime in the foreseeable future.
Well, the word prepared, absolutely not, because I don't see that being, something that would be possible for me from a financial standpoint. I'd absolutely love to fly, but I will close just by saying I'm thankful to these folks for kind of forging the path, this parallel to what NASA is doing, bringing space exploration to life in a whole new way that will allow us to, to achieve the ultimate benefits of improving life on Earth. So I say thanks to them. And I say thanks to them when I get on the airplane, because we wouldn't be flying on airplanes the way we do without those people from the past making that possible for us.
Absolutely. Whether you're a cynic or not, it's an extraordinary feat in a very lucrative market that these billionaires
Eventually,
are likely
yes, I think so.
to be entering. Nicole Stott, former NASA astronaut, founding director for Space for Art. Thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. Thank you, Nicole.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Sadly, that's all we have time for today, but do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.